Okay, so we've got cheese plate.
Yep.
We got drinks.
Yep.
We got hot honey.
Yep.
We have a dark and stormy.
Yes.
Alright, I'm gonna try it.
We're gonna try it. Oh.
Oh lord.
Mostly rum.
That's just straight rum.
Okay, well.
Okay, straws.
Straws are good. Straws are really good.
Straws, okay.
Oh, straws help.
Oh! That straw helps a lot.
Straws and mixing help. Welcome to the ASMR section of our podcast.
In which we drink the drink that we made, and then immediately start eating a cheese plate.
Yeah, that was, whew. What is the appeal of a dark and stormy? Is it just because it Instagrams well?
I think so. I think that's what it is. That and like when you really want to hurt yourself.
I mean, I would rather go back to port or absinthe.
Oh my god, that port.
I've been talking about port all week.
I have a headache from a week ago from the port.
I almost bought more port of my own volition.
I mean, if you want, there's some in like... Okay, so we actually have a podcast like cocktail shelf now.
Yeah, we have to.
Well, it's starting to become the full shelf. My husband has asked me what's going on because I'm like, we need more gin. And he's like, there's an entire bottle of gin. And I said, no, that's podcast gin.
I love that I have a sequestered section of gin. This is wonderful.
Evidently, it doesn't go over well.
No.
No. And my husband's not drinking the gin. That's the thing. I'm the one drinking the gin. And this just makes me sound like an old British woman.
I mean, I just put artificial flowers in a bottle of Bombay Sapphire and put that on my table as decoration.
That actually sounds very nice.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Pretty bottle.
It is a beautiful bottle. Shall we get started?
So this week we're covering is it Sargasso Sea or is it Sargasso Sea or is it...
I'm a southerner, so it's been Sargasso.
Okay, I'll go with that. By Rhys. We've already kind of talked about what we're drinking.
Yeah, so we're drinking a Dark and Stormy, which if you look on our Instagram, it doesn't look like other Dark and Stormies, mostly because we couldn't find the rum that looks like vanilla extract.
So I didn't get the Myers rum. I got the Curazan because that was what was at the liquor store next to my house. And looking back, this was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't Instagram well, or as well as others have, but it certainly does feel like it is dark and I am in a storm.
There you go.
I feel like I'm on a ship being battered by emotions.
And I mean, that's kind of this whole book, right?
Yeah, that's why we're drinking it. Also, because we couldn't drink a Mai Tai because I have food allergies.
Which is fine. I'm down with this.
I'm not down with this.
The subtitle of this episode is A Really Shitty Island Vacation.
Yes, this 100% feels like the start of a lot of episodes of 90 Day Fiancé, where it's like, I went to Jamaica once and found the love of my life, and I'm going to smuggle him in a suitcase.
I've never watched the show. What is the show?
90 Day Fiancé is a reality television show where people meet the love of their lives outside of the U.S., and they have to come in on what I believe is called a K-1 visa. It's like a 90-day visa. They have to get married so that person can stay in the country. And it is a hot mess.
Okay, is this on like Hulu or something?
Yes.
I know what I'm doing tonight. And I can hear the howling from downstairs of, no, you are not.
Yeah, 90 Day Fiancé is my jam. I'm a bit of a slut for reality television. We're being honest because I feel like, especially after Port last week, I feel like we owe our audience some honesty and some brevity. We also have a special guest, which is Mike's Hot Honey.
Which we're going to eat on cheese as we're like away from the what is it, microphone. It's not a camera. I think we've done that like 4 times this morning.
It might be a camera. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe someone's watching us, which I hope not. I don't look pretty today.
I'm kind of hoping my FBI friend Jake is watching us.
I mean, maybe.
I mean, I don't have a real friend named Jake, but that's what I've named him.
So, we're also drinking a Dark and Stormy because of foreshadowing?
Foreshadowing, because this book is 90% foreshadowing.
It is foreshadowing to another book that was written literally hundreds of years before it.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting.
It is. When I was in school, to tell you the level of nerd I am, I wrote like a weird, like, essentially a fan fiction to Kill a Mockingbird. Because apparently I had a weird crush on one of the characters, and I don't remember which one. And my drama teacher was like, I thought this was just another part of the book. And it's like, that's one, insulting to Harper Lee, and two, very complimentary to me as a junior high school student. So I can completely understand why you would do this, and I fully support this choice if you guys remember last week's episode.
So I'm going to need to find the name of the actual book and put it on our website, but there is actually a book that follows Adele's life as well. The little girl from Jane Eyre, but I don't remember what it's called because I had one of those moments at 3 a.m. where I was like, I'm going to write a book about Adele. And then I got in there and I realized it had already been done many years before I was born. So anyway.
I want to write a book about the seamstress who had to make Mr. Rochester's gypsy outfit.
I think you should.
I will.
Let's do it. Short fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Start putting it on our website.
Heck yes.
Please feel free to write your fan fiction and send it to us at unfortunatelyrequiredreading@gmail.com.
Oh my gosh, we forgot the most important part of our speculative fanfiction universe last week.
Which part?
We did not sort Charlotte Bronte.
We did. Oh, we didn't.
Ravenclaw.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Ravenclaw. That's
okay. So we've added someone else to the Harry Potter AU. If you guys have fanfic of that, I'd love to see it.
I feel like we actually do need to make our chart, though.
I'll make a chart.
This is our chart. Everybody thinks Hemingway is a Gryffindor. No, friends, he is a Slytherin.
Oh, he's too mean.
He's an a-hole.
I mean, I'm not always mean.
Which is hard because I love Hemingway and hate him in equal measure.
I think that's how everyone feels about him.
I think that's how his wives felt about him, too.
I mean, they deserve to.
My apologies to Margot Hemingway, his granddaughter, who's still alive.
Oh, I was like...
Yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Are we apologizing to Ghost? Are we at that level?
No.
Speaking of Ghost, this is the story of an attic wife who should not be a central character to anything, but is now.
It is now. So, I always say that these are short plots, but that's always a bold-faced lie, and you all know this by this point.
Accurate.
Amanda is the one who gives you the short points. I'm the one who goes on forever, so I apologize.
Good cop, anyway, bad cop.
There are 3 parts to this story, which is interesting because they're kind of narrated by different people, except the first and third part.
I think that that's narratively very interesting, but also it makes me angry.
Yes. There's also a really weird part in part 2 where if you're not paying attention, you don't realize that it switched back to Antoinette for 5 seconds.
Yes.
So, if you're reading this for school, be really careful.
Yes.
If you're reading this for fun, also be very careful.
If you're reading this for school, go ahead and break up each individual part using different color Post-it notes and then use different color highlighters. That's what I did.
Why are you smarter than me?
Oh, I'm just ADD and I need things to study.
So part 1 is told from Antoinette's perspective. She's a beautiful Creole girl. Her father is dead and her mother is struggling to keep the plantation in Jamaica alive. Her little brother is sick and the only people who seem to care about them are the servants who live with them. Their neighbor, Mr. Luttrell, shoots his dog, then swims out to sea, and everyone's talking about it.
As you do.
Antoinette's family are called white cockroaches because they don't fit in with either the black or white society on the island. Mm-hmm. Antoinette's mother suffers from mental illness. Mm-hmm. She marries a rich Englishman named Mr. Mason. While they honeymoon and fix up Colibri, which is the plantation, the kids go away to stay at their aunt's home. They return home to a restored Colibri. Mr. Mason has hired all new servants, except for Christophine, who is their caretaker before. Antoinette's mother begs for them to go away because she feels something terrible is going to happen. Mr. Mason thinks she's being crazy. Mm-hmm. Then their plantation is burned to the ground by inhabitants on the island. Her brother dies, her mother is sent away for madness, and Antoinette ends up in Catholic school to study and learn how to become a, quote, proper lady.
Yes.
Mr. Mason visits her with gifts regularly. Antoinette has a horrifying dream about finding a faceless man in a forest while she's being chased.
So, I'm going to pause here very briefly. We're probably going to end up using words that may or may not be culturally sensitive to you. Mm-hmm. Like, I know we don't use Creole in this sense anymore. Mm-hmm. So, if that bothers you, please know that we're not doing so to be cruel or insensitive. It is what the book uses, and while that's never an excuse, I just don't want to rustle any jimmies.
And be advised that this book uses the N-word
a lot.
It's like it's sprinkled through.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Django Unchained, where like I actually wish that he would have just used the N-word more because the words that he ended up using in place of that in Django Unchained were just as bad. It feels a little bit like that in this book, where it's like, at this stage, both are terrible.
What's interesting, too, is this book came out in the 60s. I looked it up, guys.
Very proud.
And that's pretty high in the civil rights period, so...
Yeah, almost like that didn't matter to the author.
Almost, right? So, part 2 is mostly from Mr. Rochester's perspective, although occasionally Antoinette comes in here.
Which I think is quite sweet that their narratives intermingle.
Kind of.
This is the one nice thing I have to say this entire book.
So this is the part of the book that gets real emotional, guys. So Mr. Rochester, he comes to Jamaica. At this part of the book, he's discussing his new marriage to Antoinette and his concerns that she might not be how she appeared. He got sick for the first 3 weeks after they got married, and now he's really starting to pay attention to her.
Praise be.
They go to the other family estate, Grambois. The two start to explore each other. Anyway, yeah. Antoinette with love, Mr. Rochester with lust. Antoinette tries to explain to him what it's like to feel disconnected on the island. He doesn't understand at first, or really care.
Yeah, he's white. He doesn't have problems.
He gets a letter from someone claiming to be Antoinette's half-brother. Her half-brother, Daniel Causeway, may or may not be her half-brother, but most likely is, says the whole damn family is crazy and Mr. Rochester is screwed.
Is that what, like, my future husband will get? Is just a letter in the mail saying the whole family is crazy?
I don't think so.
I kind of hope they do.
Just don't go back up north.
Oh, right.
I'm not triangulating your family's position.
I don't care.
So Mr. Rochester starts to get really weird around Antoinette, and he starts to read about, okay, I don't know how to pronounce this, the Obe? Obia? O-B-E-A-H? Obe. In a book called The Glittering Coronet of the Isles, and he starts to think everyone is out to get him. Antoinette goes to her former caretaker, Christophine, to try to get her to do something to make Mr. Rochester fall in love again, thinking that she's going to do some special spell or something. Christophine tells her she's an idiot for relying on a man and refuses to help her at first. After all, Christophine has 3 kids from 3 different guys, has never gotten married on purpose because she thinks men are scum. Antoinette, I'm going to find my spot again. Antoinette is still unnerved to find out that under English law, all the money that she had and herself are now property of Mr. Rochester.
Almost like marriage sucks sometimes.
Almost like it does. Christophine tells her to either talk to her husband or say she needs to travel, get some money, run away, and never fucking come back. When Antoinette won't give in to the pleas, Christophine agrees to help her. Mr. Rochester goes and actually visits Daniel Causeway to find out more information on Antoinette's family. He returns and tries to lie to Antoinette that he's only worried about her and her well-being, but he realizes he doesn't love her. He keeps calling Antoinette Bertha. She absolutely hates it, but she keeps giving her husband some rum. He stays up, keeps drinking rum, and ends up drinking a potion that Christophine made, which is inside the rum itself.
Woo!
He later accuses Antoinette of trying to poison him because he gets super sick.
Not false.
One of the house servants, Amelie, tells Rochester that she feels sorry for him, and they end up getting groiny. Antoinette cannot get her husband to say why he hates her so much. She ends up getting wasted on rum and straight up losing her shit. Things are not great. Mr. Rochester, as always, bemoans his existence.
Yes.
Antoinette ends up sinking her teeth into Mr. Rochester's arm.
Yep. And
he thinks she's just like her mother. Christophine tells Mr. Rochester this is all his fault.
Because of course it is.
Because of course it is. Part 3. Now locked up in Thornfield Hall under the care of Grace Poole, Antoinette doesn't believe she's actually in England, gets out of the room, and decides to burn the motherfucker down.
Yeah, I mean, hearing it back, it does feel remarkably like Django Unchained.
I still need to watch this movie.
Ma'am!
We've talked about this so many times, and I still haven't watched it.
And I think it's my favorite movie. I think it might be one of my favorite Tarantinos. You need to watch it. I'm going to give you just a list.
Just give me a list. I need it.
It does feel remarkably like Django Unchained. So your short plot is that a dubiously ethnic woman in Jamaica is doing pretty much okay, except for mental illness, which is a problem. A white guy comes in, thinks that she's feasibly attractive,
and rich,
does basic guy things, immediately sleeps around with other people, and things all go downhill from here, up into burning the house down.
I mean, from this perspective, it kind of seems fair.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things about Jane Eyre that bothered me, was that it's like, oh, the crazy attic wife. Like, I'm sorry, if I was a wife trapped in the attic, I would also burn the house down, and I would have done it sooner.
It kind of reminds me of when you're dating somebody and they're like, oh my god, my ex-girlfriend is nuts. And then you date that person for more than 6 months and you realize that that person is nuts and their ex-girlfriend probably had a point.
Right, and
or boyfriend.
Yeah, the person you're dating. I think the big thing with this book that hurts is that mental illness is just not. It's a thing to run from.
Mm-hmm. This is definitely from a time period where you just locked people up.
But even still, it's written from someone in the 60s. Mm-hmm. We still are at a phase. Like, that hasn't changed. And as a person of color who had mentally ill matriarchs, my mom was mentally ill, my grandmother was. I am to this day. I immensely empathized with Antoinette just sitting here like, I hope I don't get the crazy. Oh wait, I got it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many parts of this book where you're like, well, that seems like pretty standard depression and anxiety.
Yeah, or honestly, a lot of it sounds like bipolar. Which is something that bipolar is always listed as like a white young man's disease. If you look at rates in the South, it's not. And that Southern heritage comes from, 1, African descent, and then 2, Creole, Jamaican, Caribbean, all of that. So, of course, no one does studies on these things, but if I ever, had the disposable income in the time, I would love to trace the roots of bipolar disorder in African American women.
That would be because really worthwhile study.
I don't think it's talked about enough. And it gets misdiagnosed as many other things, as just being the crazy black lady. But I think it really goes back very, very far, and it would explain so much about some of these tropes and things that we especially ascribe to African American women. And it would change how we then treat the condition, because it's still treated as like a young white guy impulse illness, and it's not. It's not like schizophrenia in that way.
Right. And you see a lot of this too, I mean, just in women's studies in general. I mean, how much postpartum depression is people being told, oh, you're just being selfish.
Right. How dare you not want to spend every waking minute with this parasite that you have just birthed. I don't like children, sorry.
I like kids.
No.
Yeah, but, yeah.
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 You guys probably weren't expecting a heavy podcast, were you?
We'll try to lighten it up with some more lighter dark rum.
If I could make this drink disappear, I'd be the happiest man on earth.
You can pour it in my cup.
We're not going to indirect kiss with rum.
Fine. So this book is literally just sprinkled with foreshadowing, like sprinkles on a cupcake. Like a sprinkles on a cupcake that your small child took a handful of and put on their cupcake.
Yes.
So I'm going to go through a few symbols. I'm going to let Amanda go through some themes. So Calabria State's decline is a big symbol. The downfall of colonial empire that basically just exploded in the West Indies.
Yes.
What's interesting too is Colibri means hummingbird, which interestingly enough in Latin culture is a messenger between the living and the dead. Thank you, Spark Notes.
Yeah, thank you, Internet.
Poisoning of Antoinette's mother's horse. This removes any means they have of escape. Mm-hmm. The flies and Antoinette's obsession with the death show her obsession with decay and the loss of the only life she's known up until this point. Mr. Luttrell going into the sea. The apprehension of the white inhabitants of the island, fearing retribution from former slaves on the island.
Which, realistically, at this time, I believe we would have had the Haitian Revolution by now. Mm-hmm. Which was literally a bunch of slaves taking up arms and killing a bunch of white plantation owners. So, valid.
I mean, can you blame them, though?
No, the Haitian revolt is one of the big things that always gets lobbed at them, especially like Southern slavery. It's like, well, why didn't you just? It's like, please. That didn't work well for Haiti for very long. Mm-hmm. Though, God bless Louverture for everything that he did.
So, there's also a part with pennies with her friend Tia. At one point, Christophine gives Antoinette some pennies. She ends up making a bet with her friend Tia about flipping underwater. Tia takes the pennies and her pretty dress for good measure. These are symbols of the corrupting influence of capitalism and the corruption of innocence.
Or just children being dicks.
Well, that too.
Sorry.
Also, this is the part where Antoinette realizes that her family is falling out of social rank and she's screwed.
Yes.
The flaming parrot. This is kind of my favorite. I don't like animal cruelty, but I'm sorry I laughed.
But I do love a flaming parrot.
Because all I can think of is that scene when they did the movie adaptation of Red Dragon with Edward Norton. Where the guy isn't... There's a guy in a wheelchair on fire being pushed down the hill. And it's not funny, but it's one of those things that's so horrifying that a group of 7th grade girls will probably laugh out loud. Sorry, Hillary. So the flaming parrot, Antoinette's mother tries to rescue her parrot when the whole plantation is being burned down. Mr. Mason has clipped his wings, so unfortunately the parrot can only catch fire and plummet to its death as it tries to escape. This symbolizes the danger of men for the women in this book and the removal of their power.
Almost like it's a symbol.
Almost like it's a symbol.
It's just such a blunt symbol.
I just imagine Jean Rhys like throwing a flaming parrot and it's a problem. Antoinette's forest dream. She has this dream more than once of going into the forest and being chased, which is interesting because later I believe Mr. Rochester has an experience where he gets lost in the forest.
Yes.
The second time Antoinette has this dream, she's at Catholic school and she dreams she's being chased by a faceless man. Mm-hmm. When she awakes, she tells everybody that she dreamed of hell. This is really big foreshadowing to her eventual mental destruction. The other estate, Grand Bois, that she goes to also means big tree or big wood. So again, like, danger, foreshadowing, danger. It also doesn't help that Grand Bois is located near the city of Massacre, which is even more foreshadowing. And they point this out like 3 times in the book that they're next to Massacre and that that's a really weird name. And, oh, it's because of this.
You can't hear how tired I am.
So we read this actually short in one of my classes shortly after we read The Scarlet Letter.
Yes.
And I just feel like my teacher was like, okay, so let's just get a bunch of books that have to do with foreshadowing and see how many we pull out, like how many symbols. The moths and beetles burning to death in the candles while Antoinette and Mr. Rochester share a meal. Their dangerous passion for each other, and also echoes of the flaming parrot death.
Also, rude. Why are you just letting these... That's the least sexy thing I've ever heard of.
Okay, yeah, I was sitting there reading them going, you guys are having this, like, sexy meal, and you're looking at each other like, yeah, I want to do you, and these bugs are going into the candles. That would be a little off-putting for me.
Yeah, I would immediately go flaccid. Like, there's nothing attractive about that. Like, there's just... That's 2 sociopaths feeding each other, like, fondue or something.
Or 2 cannibals feeding each other a leg. But, like, in a Hannibal kind of way.
You know, my brain was thinking Hannibal, but, like, the weird shippy version that Tumblr really liked.
Yes.
It's that.
So, I feel like this is, like... Is this the 2nd or 3rd Thomas Harris reference I've made?
2nd.
Okay. It just gets worse from here, guys.
It
anyway, Antoinette also sees giant rats as a child. They're a symbol that trouble can still reach Grand Bois. The best part is that nobody believed her because she didn't tell anyone, which is very similar to what's happening with Mr. Rochester initially.
Yeah, they also sound like cane rats, which are which will attack people.
And they're like the size of cats.
Yeah.
So there's also the book that Mr. Rochester reads, The Glittering Coronet of the Sea. Mr. Rochester reads passages from this book about zombies. We see later that by emotionally removing her spirit, Mr. Rochester has also created a type of zombie in Antoinette.
Do we get to talk about voodoo now?
Sure!
So, my godmother is Cajun, so I grew up with a lot of, like, voodoo. In the voodoo religion, you get a zombie by having a portion of your spirit stay on Earth, while another portion goes to the afterlife. So it leaves your body in this weird limbo. You have the little angel and the big angel. And the little angel can be really, really easily distracted. So if the little angel doesn't go with the big angel to, like, the afterlife, that's how you get a zombie, is the little angel's just kicking around because you're dead. And then someone, usually a voodoo priest, can then take possession of the little angel and then resurrect your body as, like, this animated corpse. So,
which is crazy because also Antoinette keeps talking about how there are 2 deaths.
Yeah, there are 2 deaths. And then actually, death in voodoo culture is not instantaneous. Like, your body might die, but you have to wait for gentleman death to, like, come for you. And you get him to come faster by leaving him. He really likes rum. He likes peanuts. He likes cigarettes. So if you leave those things for him, he's more likely to visit you a little bit faster. Otherwise, he'll take a sweet-ass time, which then leaves you more at risk of becoming a zombie.
All right, so I've got some extra rum. And...
yeah, you have to leave those out for gentleman death. I don't think he's brand particular either, but he does like his peanuts grilled.
Oh. Don't boil him like in Savannah.
No, he'll walk right by you.
So here's the thing. The first time my husband ever told me about boiled peanuts in Savannah, I thought he was a crazy person.
Yeah.
And then I found out it was a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I'm a horrible heathen. I apologize.
No. That's not the reason.
Well, that's not the reason.
That's not the reason.
Heathen, but...
I can't say no to you being a horrible heathen, because I am, but...
I love the fact that, like, I am Lutheran by definition, but Facebook thinks I'm a witch and likes to advertise all sorts of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with being a witch. I have a lot of friends. But I just think it's funny because I'm sitting there going, I mean, I guess. I'll go with it.
I mean, I was raised Roman Catholic, but I'm hella pagan in places. Hence my near encyclopedic knowledge of voodoo ritual. How is the hot honey?
Okay, the hot honey is really good. I'm adding it to my HEB list.
Hot honey is delicious. It's hot, it's seductive, it burns a little, just like fire.
Just like fire. And bad sex.
Yeah, technically.
I just wanted to see what your face would do.
We need, like, a reaction cam.
We do need a reaction cam.
Shall we talk about the sea?
Let's talk about the sea.
So, there's one literary trope that I hate more than anything else, and that is flowery language about the ocean. And this is chock full of flowery language about the ocean. It's beautiful, it's magnificent, it is wide and is beautiful, it is compared to women. Stop. I don't like it.
I just have this image of, like, yes, she's beautiful like the sea. Tempestuous. And also she's going to break my ship in half later.
That's
you
it.
Know what I mean.
So she's essentially bottomless, will kill you, and contains creatures that also will kill you. That is the least attractive metaphor. You're throwing a hot dog into a cave and calling it hot.
This is why we don't teach sex ed.
Is that not how I'm supposed to do it? Have I been doing it wrong all these years?
We also have slavery, which is not a song that I want to sing.
It's not, and Mr. Rochester complaining about it is just so... It's... Okay, so I have like a top 5 of things that bother me. I think number 1 is when Irish Americans say the Irish were slaves too.
So... part of what's going into this is Mr. Rochester has this whole passage where he's bemoaning the fact that he was sold for 30,000 pounds by his parents to the Masons, like Antoinette Mason, not like the Masons.
That'd be a much better story.
That would be way more interesting. But just being about, oh, I am a tool of my father. Oh, I have been abandoned. Oh, everything is horrible. Woe is me. And then you have an island full of people who were actually slaves.
Yeah. No, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I hate that line. Because you get that now with, like, again, a lot. It's almost always Irish Americans. Like, it's no one from actual Ireland who has anything that would ever say that to a person of color. But it's usually white people who have never struggled in their life will look at a room full of black people and will say, the Irish were once slaves as well. It's like, you know what? Indentured servitude was bad. But you know what? You were a legal person for a very long time.
I used to do this when I was younger and stupider, and then I made more friends of color and went, whoa, okay, I'm an a-hole. I'm going to back up a little bit. I apologize.
Yeah, it's always frustrating, and you'll get that a lot in literature where you have white characters who bemoan a certain kind of slavery. It's like, oh, I'm a slave to this marriage. I'm like, you know what? This situation isn't ideal for anyone, but you aren't property in this instance.
Did anybody hamstring you, bring you back, and force you to breed?
Anyone change your name against your will?
Anyone decide that, your kid really isn't your kid, so we're going to sell them to the plantation 3 states away?
Or perhaps make a compromise that you are not a full person, you are 3/5 of a person, and that part still being a legal binding document like the Constitution.
We're just going to sit here and stare for a minute.
I hate that their Constitution still has so much stuff about slavery.
And I still want to throw in there, amend the Constitution, pass the ERA.
So, yeah, whatever vague attraction I had to Mr. Rochester from Jane Eyre is kind of lost in Wide Sargasso Sea, just because the cute complaining, not so cute in this one.
Did it kill your boner?
It did. It did. Especially now, because I think when I read it in high school, I was still pretty hard for him. But I'm older now, and I have very little patience for especially white people barking their problems at brown people.
I do also like that in this book there's a pretty big message of staying single, because otherwise another human being will destroy your life.
Yes.
Which feels very Jean Rhys. Like, it feels like her being like, just walk away, it ain't worth it.
Yeah, it does feel like when you watch romantic comedies that aren't really comedies or romantic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Christophine goes into the whole thing with Antoinette, like, just get out of here, just go, it's not worth it.
Okay.
And Daniel does the same thing to Mr. Rochester, as I'm single, because I don't need to take care of anybody,
right,
and I'm free.
Have you seen Watchmen?
Yes.
Okay, remember the first Silk Spectre?
Yes.
How she's always, talking to her daughter, just all men are pigs, just scotch in hand, no figs left to give. It feels like that. It feels like that, one, drunk aunt.
And it's
not valid, considering it's invalid. It's just
it's one of those things where if you are with the wrong person, it makes your life worse.
It does.
And that's something that my mom tried to explain to me over and over and over again in my 20s. And I kept going, but Mom, no, once I find the right man or woman, everything will be wonderful. And you know what? It took me a long time to find somebody, but I'm happy that I waited.
I'm very big on there's no Mr. Right, there's just Mr. Right now. Because, I'm not the same person I was in high school.
Oh, hell no, we change every 5 minutes.
I couldn't imagine trying to go after any of the guys I went after when I was younger.
Same here. Oh, God. Well, to be fair, also the first 2 guys I was desperately in love with were not playing for my team.
Ah.
Yeah.
I haven't had that problem.
I had no gaydar at all, because I just thought everybody liked everybody like I did.
You pansexual hussy.
I know. So, there's also the narrative of the island showing you your real self.
I also hate that. I've been on cruises. The island tells you nothing. The island tells you that sunburn is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that fish are terrible. And sand is miserable. The island tells you nothing.
And that if your husband plays Assassin's Creed, you're going to walk to the Queen steps and you're going to be tired and sweaty and dirty. And then you're going to come back and you're just going to drink another rum drink. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to come back to Texas and have to pay taxes on that rum.
Yep.
Because they're in individual bottles and Texas is the devil.
But it's very Lord of the Flies.
Also, I take that back because Texas will burn me if I say Texas is the devil.
They will. But it's very Lord of the Flies that, the island will show you your true intentions.
I'm super excited for when we end up doing Lord of the Flies.
Do we have to?
We do, because I really want to say, and Jack wept for the loss of innocence. That's a shout out to my sister. Anyway.
Okay, we'll read Lord of the Flies.
Okay, so this hot honey is really good, you guys.
It is.
You don't understand. Well, Nashville might understand. Nashville, call us. So this novel is, of course, a response to other novels.
It is.
I'm letting you eat some cheese plate. So I'm going to throw some stuff in there. Like Jane Eyre, there's a lot of religious imagery. You alright?
Dying.
Don't die, please.
I'm good.
Okay. There's a whole passage where Godfrey, who is one of the servants with the original Colibri, says that black and white is all the same in God's eyes, and everybody's like, wait, what? Calibri's gardens are also called the Garden of Eden by Antoinette. There's a whole thing about the loss of human innocence. It's a little crazy.
The whole book is crazy. Why is everything crazy? Let's see. Yeah. I mean, is it a Garden of Eden, though?
No. I don't really feel like it is, because they feel like they're going to get killed every 5 minutes. Somebody poisons their horse.
It wasn't Eden bad?
Eden wasn't bad until they decided to go against God's word, at least in the Bible.
Which, I think that happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So Eden was bad.
It ended up that way.
Yep.
And as you had noted, this book is also hailed as a post-colonial retelling of Jane Eyre.
It is. So post-colonial in the sense that it gives a character who didn't really have a voice, but we knew was ethnically ambiguous, and decided to spend some time on that. I don't think it's that post-colonial, though, because I feel like it lobs a ton of softballs at the actual issue. The history of that area is very complicated. Mm-hmm. And we could honestly have several other podcasts about the history of the Caribbean, of Jamaica, of Haiti. We briefly mentioned the Haitian revolts. Shout out to Crash Course. Crash Course World History, if you want to learn about that. It still feels like it's lobbing a softball at a lot of these things, and especially considering that you can't expect people to know this. Mm-hmm. Like, one thing that is always a surprise is that a lot of times, especially in the Caribbean, it was people of color that owned slaves. Which is not fun to explain to people. There was an entire caste system based purely on race and how light-skinned you were, which is a trope and a painful thing that exists to this day in the African-American community of this light-skinned Illuminati versus if you're too dark. It's frustrating because if you don't have that context, it makes it very, very hard to empathize with the position that Antoinette is put into. Mm-hmm. And that makes it hard to empathize with her. Because then she becomes like Mr. Rochester, where you just don't understand why she's complaining.
And Jean Rhys was actually from Dominica, so she grew up in the area, and
yes,
this was just second nature to her. It's kind of like if you grow up in California or parts of Texas, or... because just so you guys know, Texas is one state, but it used to be a country, and it's all different wherever you go. Yes. So Houston is different from San Antonio, which is different from Austin, which people don't believe, but it is. And very different from Dallas, and, just... There's also, I think it's Brady, Texas, which is the heart of Texas. Very different from any other place.
Who gave Brady the heart of Texas?
It's like in the center.
I thought that was Itasca.
Is it? Because if you go to Brady, it's all painted on all the buildings.
Okay, well, Brady's a liar. I don't know. I've never been.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of the difficult things, even too, about our elections and stuff in Texas is Austin will light up blue, San Antonio will light up blue, all the cities in between will light up red. It's a very complex state, but people from Iowa don't necessarily understand what it's like to grow up in California. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's like to grow up in Minnesota. Like, I don't know what it's like to grow up in Wisconsin. Everybody has different experiences. Well, and so some of the things that she brings in here are a little difficult to understand because she knows the cultural heritage.
And she knows the historical heritage of it. So we have that a little bit in South Texas, especially. We have the missions. Mm-hmm. And everyone thinks of the Alamo. No one thinks about the Catholic influence, the encomienda, the slavery, the racism, the massacres, the genocide, the forcing of religion onto people, the cultural genocide.
We had that all over California, all the way up and down the coast.
No one teaches that here. We just teach the Alamo, and everyone was so brave, and look what they died for. They died so they could own slaves and they could keep enslaving Native Americans. They wanted African slaves, and they wanted to keep hurting Native Americans. That is what the Alamo was fought over. Hot take. That isn't a hot take.
We're also about 20 minutes from the Alamo, which is really very small.
I see the Alamo every day, almost, because I work very close to it. And there is nothing that brings me greater schadenfreude than tourist. It's tiny.
What is always interesting to me, too, is it's like across the street from one of the entrances to Riverwalk.
Yes.
So you basically go to the Alamo, look at stuff, walk across the street, and then go get as many beers as you can carry?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I always tell tourists, go to literally any of the other missions.
Please do.
There's literally 5. Go down the street. Just, a lot of them are much prettier. But we don't talk about any of the uncomfortable parts of it. I mean, America is bad about talking about the uncomfortable parts, just to start with.
Well, we've talked about it too. Most countries are, and that's not like me trying to defend the U.S. It's we as human beings just go, we're not going to talk about that thing.
I think there's a difference. I think there's willful ignorance, which is what America has. And then there's like, I can't expect a modern person in England to understand the effects of colonialism. I just can't. That's just not fair. I can't be mad at someone right now in London for what happened in India. That was a mess and that was terrible, but we are willfully quelling that conversation in the U.S. I think that's the difference. Is you have people who like a German internment. Mm-hmm. We have people who survived German internment and are like raising their hands like this was a thing that I'm like, no, get back in the closet. As opposed to just there's so much time between those histories that, I mean, again, it doesn't make it okay, but I'm willing to throw a softer ball at the matter.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know about Japanese internment in the U.S. until I was an older teenager, and that's because we had a family friend who was interned as a kid.
Right.
And told us about it, and we went, that happened?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, Japanese internment's another great example. We have George Takei, who was very vocal about it, and people are like, what do you mean that happened? It's like, it happened. But, we tend to just sort of suppress that dialogue, and we tend to definitely suppress a lot of the stuff about the racism and the slavery, and I know in the Caribbean they don't like talking about it either.
No.
It's all very uncomfortable.
Continuing to drink the Dark and Stormy.
Even though it hurts me.
It does. I like it, though. Because I've now gotten past that stage where the rum burns off your taste buds.
I'm getting there. Looks longingly into glass.
Is this one of those times where I'm going to need to order, like, nachos or something to be delivered to the house?
I'll be fine.
Are you sure?
Positive. I'm great. I don't know what you're talking about.
We're going to eat some cheese. Oh, this is hard now. What's great about this book is that it's about 1/8 of the size of Jane Eyre.
It is.
And we've just gone even farther than we did with Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many symbols. There's so much back history.
Yep.
I will admit that we don't know as much about Jean Rhys as we do for Charlotte Bronte.
Yeah, I wonder why. Did she just, like, not want to be found?
I think at some point in time she didn't. So she was born Ella Gwendolyn Rhys Williams in the British West Indies in Dominica. She was alive from 1890 to 1979.
That seems really recent.
It does seem really recent. What's weird is it's like now we're in 2019 and it's like we're really far from the 70s now, but it still feels like, oh, well, I was born in the 80s, so... what?
I was just at the Institute of Text and Cultures with a friend who's also African American, and we were talking about the Civil Rights Act. Mm-hmm. It's like, how long ago was that? It's like 60s? That seems really far. Spoiler, it's not. It's not.
Well, I mean, on a comparative timeline, it's definitely not. I mean, slavery on a comparative timeline just ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Legally a full person since 1865.
I know you have a shirt.
I do have a shirt.
She made it.
I did.
Mm-hmm. So, Wide Sargasso Sea is Jean Rhys's most famous book. It was published in 1966, but she spent a long time perfecting it. It's been said that she spent several years writing it, going back over it, editing, cutting, adding. And then finally she felt like it was okay to be published. Mm-hmm. She did win an Order of the British Empire for her writing, which is weird because we just talked about colonialism.
We did just talk about colonialism. I do have a question.
Yes.
I wonder what about this narrative did it for her. And I mean, if it's anything half of what I felt about it, then I can understand air quotes, but especially during her time period, I'd love to know, like, I'm pretty big on the author's dead camp, even in this case, literally.
She had a pretty rough life. So something to bring up too, at that time, like, when the book is supposed to be set, Creole meant anyone born on an island, yes. Those islands, regardless of skin tone.
Yes.
Rhys did not have an easy life. She grew up on the island, but a lot like the character of Antoinette, she was sent to England to live with her aunt when she was 16, because she and her mom did not see eye to eye on anything. She was made fun of for her accent. She had a teacher tell her that she wasn't good enough because of her accent. She ended up living in London for a long time and Paris. She worked as a chorus girl for a while. She was a mistress to a wealthy stockbroker who, even though he was single, was like, we're never getting married. She almost died from an abortion, not from the stockbroker. I looked it up.
Okay.
She acted as a nude model and also had the very boring job of working in a pension office at one point in time.
It's like a Josephine Baker-esque character.
Did
everything.
She moved back to the islands when she was a little bit older, thinking that it was going to fix everything, and it didn't. When she got there, she ended up having to help out her brother Oscar and come up with a, quote, financial solution after he fathered a child with a woman who was of mixed race, and then her brother abandoned the said woman.
Oh, well then.
So I feel like that's where Daniel Causeway comes in a lot.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. She was out of the public eye for a very long time before this book came out. In fact, almost all of her works had gone out of print at that point in time.
Right.
And after the publication of Wide Sargasso Sea, her friends came together and helped get her other books back in print.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. She did not have an easy life by any stretch of the imagination. She was married multiple times. Every time it seemed to break up pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
A lot of her books are about the underworld of the city that she lived in at the time, whether fictional or not. Very, very fascinating to read, but tough. It's definitely tough.
Yeah. Again, I'm pretty... The author is dead, but you can't always ignore the author. So it does seem like this is very much rooted in real feelings that she had, and she just chose this lens to view it through.
I mean, definitely the feeling of not belonging, of leaving your parents and being taken to a school to try and learn how to be a proper lady, to having to take care of situations that your family members caused.
Right. Well, and one thing that I forgot to mention is this all reads like dual consciousness, which is a term used for African Americans of you have a consciousness that is of African descent, and you have a consciousness that is to show that you exist and you can survive in a white society. So your mannerisms change, how you hold yourself changes, your speech patterns change, all of that changes because you have to blend in a sense, to white society. You can't talk the way you do around your black friends the way you do around your white friends. And you'd think that goes away. It doesn't.
No.
So the whole idea of Antoinette being renamed something horrible, and accents being used as weapons, it all just screams dual consciousness. It's a little triggering, honestly.
I mean, I remember being in college and being told, don't ever let somebody get away with using axe instead of ask. And me being like, yeah. And then getting older and being like, no. Oh my God. Walk away from it. Like,
right.
You do not need to be the verbal police. Sweet Jesus.
No.
Like, people talk differently. Language is constantly evolving. I mean, for crying out loud, English is like a language that stack three people on top of each other and beats up other languages for terms. Like, we're not sitting here trying to tell you how to talk. Oh my God.
Well, and especially the one with naming.
Oh God.
Because I have a very white sounding name. There's a reason behind that. My family wanted me to be socially acceptable. I have to be white normative. That's why my hair is relaxed. It's why I have a white name. Those are all the reasons behind it. So there is no like, oh, what language did your name come from? There's no like secret tribe in Africa.
What's really interesting too is when somebody's like, oh, LaQuisha and stuff like that, and then you actually look up the name, and it happens to be a variation of your own name, and you sit there and go, I'm a racist piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's not our place to rename people.
No, but that desire to be normative runs very deep.
Oh, hell yes.
Like, again, like, I just love getting my hair relaxed because I was told for many, many years that if my hair was natural, that was not socially acceptable.
Sorry.
I killed it, I'm sorry.
That rum. Rum is strong.
There is plague in this podcast, I apologize.
I feel bad because, like, you're making a really solid, real point, and I, like, suddenly start dying because I inhaled rum in the wrong pipe.
It's okay. I mean, valid. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, you think about all those things, and it's stuff that people don't want to talk about or don't like talking about, but I'm willing to talk about it. Like, nowadays when people ask me, oh, why is your hair relaxed? Like, because of white hegemony. I've heard that, too, from you. And it really disarms people, but...
It's like, wait, what?
It's like, what? It's like, but that's true. It's like, did you choose to get your hair relaxed? No, white beauty standards told me to get my hair relaxed. Do you think I enjoy paying $100 every 2 months to have essentially what is paint thinner lobbed onto my scalp?
And see, I just avoid going to the hairstylist because I keep ending up as somebody's therapist every time.
I have to get this done once every 6 to 8 weeks.
I just need to go with you when you go. And
it's like a 2-hour appointment.
No more paint thinner.
I mean, I don't have I don't see myself as pretty with natural hair.
I want to know what you look like with natural hair.
I look like Foxy Cleopatra.
I promise not to try to touch it.
Oh my god, please. Thank you.
This is going to be another, like, 3-hour podcast right there.
Yeah, that's another, like, 5-hour podcast. Please don't touch people of color. Just don't touch people's hair.
As a white person, I beg you, you can tell your friends of color how beautiful their hair is. That is fine. Don't try to touch their hair. Don't touch pregnant women's bellies. Don't touch tattoos. It is none of your freaking business. You can tell people they look great. You can tell them you like their outfit. Please don't touch people without their permission.
Yeah, and I will say, I think Wide Sargasso Sea brings up the uncomfortable feeling of, like, again, like, exoticism and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, I love when people are like, what part of Africa are you from? I don't know. There are no records because I wasn't a person until 1865.
Amen.
Like, I love this, like, neo-liberal fascination with black bodies now. Of, like, oh, did you choose to get your hair relaxed? Choice as in society told me? No. Choose as in I made the appointment last week? Yes. Society and the patriarchy told me to, but I did call the JCPenney's.
I'm sorry, I'm just having this image of you being like, hi, I'd like to schedule my white hegemony appointment, please.
That's literally what it is. It's every 6 to 8 weeks. Hello, I would like my white hegemony appointment. Yeah, you might need to cut some off.
I just imagine, like, I really want all of my hairstylists now to have shirts that are like, and white hegemony, and the patriarchy. Yeah. Okay, so were you going with a bob this time? Or are you just cutting the ends off?
Are you going through your quarter life? I need to cut my hair short and or get bangs?
Oh my god. Don't ever get drunk and cut your bangs, guys.
No, don't do that.
Just don't do it.
But, that's always something that, and again, it's something that I've had all my life, but I'm old now and I'm tired. And I hate that question so much. Do you know where in Africa you came from? I do not.
You're like, I have no idea.
I have no idea, and I truthfully have no desire to find out.
I'm one of those people who's always like, I want to do one of those cheek swab tests, and then I'm like, I ain't no snitch.
Yeah, but it also must be nice to have records of your people that go back hundreds of years.
Right.
I think we tried to do an ancestry.com thing, and it only went back, I think, like, to the, like, 1900s. It's like, what happened? Like, oh, right, we weren't people. There's nothing like that. There's no way to describe that feeling. It really sours the whole... There's nothing more to learn. And then more importantly, what am I going to do? Let's say I do the cheek swab thing and they bank my DNA, because it does. Mm-hmm. It does.
Oh, and it's great too, because there are people who can upload your results to this one site that's for genealogists.
We're never getting sponsored, are we?
No, we're not.
Dang it.
Guess how they found the Golden State Killer?
Yeah, it was through one of those dumb DNA things.
DNA. Did we talk about this last time too?
I feel like we talked about it before.
Okay, I feel like we've had this rant.
We have. But let's say I do it, and it's like, oh, you're from the Kingdom of Mali. Excellent. I would go over great there. Excellent. I'm queer, light-skinned, and an American. I'll be a god. There's nothing for me in the motherland anymore. And that's sad. And I wish that people looked at this book through that lens.
I mean, even Alice Walker was talking about how she went back and was studying out in Africa for a while. And she's like, it is not the paradise that you think it is. Please stop.
Yeah. And especially the exoticism of islands bothers me. Mm-hmm. Because Jamaica has some poverty issues. Haiti has some poverty issues.
Severe.
Pretty much every island in the Caribbean that isn't a resort has some poverty issues. And the resort ones have their own weird version of modern slavery.
Oh, it is the weirdest thing. You get off a cruise ship. You're like, oh, we're so cute. We're just going to go get a drink. It's fine. It's fine. And you walk in and it's like this plaza.
Yeah.
And the plaza is filled with people braiding hair, and providing snacks and drinks, and people desperately standing on the side of the road trying to get you to go with them.
Because you are their economy.
You are their entire economy.
And it's annoying. And also, I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and say it. If you are white and you go to Jamaica and you get your hair braided, please know that I'm personally disappointed in you.
I intentionally went and did not get my hair done.
I'm very proud.
Like that, because I was going... No, To quote
my last article, I'm very proud of you for doing the bare minimum.
Oh, I did the bare minimum, friend. I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying.
I'm very proud of you for... Also, if you do go on, like, a Caribbean vacation and you are not, or even me, like, I'm African American, don't take pictures with Native people.
Oh, God. So that's the thing that kills me, is when you see all of these trips and stuff when they're like, we've gone to Africa to help build this shelter. And it's like pictures with a small child with a distended belly. And I'm like, no, put your iPhone away.
Yeah.
What? No. If you're going to do good, do good. You don't need to photograph it for proof.
And not that you can't take photos, because I've been to the Bahamas. It's beautiful. One, ask people. They are people. Mm-hmm. Ask if it's okay to record or take photos. And then take pictures of things. Don't glorify the people who are trying to survive, because Carnival Cruise says this is their economy now.
See, I'm just like picturing, can you imagine if somebody came and was taking pictures of us just like walking down the street and they're like, oh, the culture here is so strong.
You know what? I work downtown, so I see that a lot with people like from China and Japan.
Oh.
Like the way, like, it's like, oh, America is so busy. Like, this is nothing, dude. This is... There is nothing going on today.
You guys aren't here for the Battle of Flowers, are you?
I say, you should wait till Fiesta.
So, something for all of you who don't live in San Antonio.
Right.
In April, pretty much the entire city gets drunk.
Yes.
Woo! There are cultural reasons behind it.
Yeah, it actually used to be very Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anymore.
It's not anymore. Now it's really just a way to market to people in San Antonio and get them to actually hang out downtown.
And to buy medals.
Mm-hmm. Which we do.
I do, yes. We do.
Wish we could afford them. Anyway.
I think we've solved colonialism.
Did we?
Yeah, just acknowledge it and admit that it sucked.
Okay.
We're not going back there, are we?
So we did not get our 50 people, so I'm not reading 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, I said I gave myself 4 weeks.
Oh, it's 4 weeks.
I gave myself 4 weeks.
Shit. Okay. So.
You still have several weeks before we figure out.
Shit. Okay.
Oh no, I built myself a nest, darling.
To my 5 friends who actually listen to this podcast, I expect you to turn this against me.
Yes.
Please gather the troops.
Oh yeah.
Rate, write, subscribe.
Yep.
Do whatever you want. Well, maybe not whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a pretty low bar for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't tell people don't do things that I wouldn't do because the list is a lot shorter than it used to be.
I apologize for coughing. I am recovering from a chest cold.
I apologize for coughing because I drank rum down the wrong hole.
Also, a Saturday night.
Woo! So the next episode we are going to discuss
Beowulf.
Beowulf! I will be reading from the Seamus Heaney translation because it's my favorite.
And I will be casting runes using a cow's stomach as a veil. I don't know. I don't want to read this book.
I'm all excited. I got the one with like the old English. I've seen one of the translations of it at the British Library. I'm like, yes! I read this in college! And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I mean, it wasn't bad. It just didn't do anything for me.
Understood.
I would much rather read Thor.
Thor?
Yeah, like, a lot of the Thor comic books are really, like, very Beowulf-esque.
I mean, we can read it as supplemental reading.
Cool.
This is what I do for fun, man. This is why there's like 10 books in research.
I know. I will begrudgingly read Beowulf because it means we get to My True Love the week after that.
Mm-hmm. So, we are all over social media.
Yep.
I'm going to be putting up the books and stuff that we referenced on our website, unfortunatelyrequiredreading.com.
Yes.
We're also on Facebook at Unfortunately Required Reading. Twitter on Unfortunately RR, because Twitter is weird.
It does its best.
It does do its best. Unfortunately Required on Instagram if you want to see pictures of our drinks. Drinks. Or if you have a book you want to suggest, or a funny story about your English class or your fan fiction.
Yes.
Please send that to unfortunatelyrequiredreading@gmail.com.
Now, please go read a book.
Please.
Longest podcast?
Oh my god, longest podcast.